Hello and welcome everyone to the fourth session of AI plus visuals meeting design. We're going to be talking about deliver and destiny. So let me go ahead and share my screen and get started today. So if you remember back in the dream phase, we talked about AI resilience and we walked through this template to help us become stronger and more resilient as we go through the world and in doing our work. And I wanted us to sort of just review some of the things that we talked about here, because not only is the fourth session about delivery, how do we deliver on our AI, but are we living into our destiny? And that destiny needs to reflect back onto the dream state. Are our needs being met? So I'm curious, as we look at some of the things that I wrote down that I heard you say, it's important that I'm being acknowledged, that to realize that there's so many possibilities, but you can also make your path while you walk it. We talked about venture, having persistence, prioritizing, making time, stepping back and asking, what am I resisting? And then when we think about evolving, did we create an active learning community in this last couple of weeks? And do you have the capacity to learn new tech? Has it increased or has that wonderment evolved? And then, of course, have I created a space for you to be heard? So I'm wondering, how are we living into this destiny? Are we like thumbs up, thumbs down? Not sure.
No, I think it's thumbs up.
Are we thumbs up? Good. I mean, I like to hear that. What else could we do to make it better? How can we take it even more forward? Is there
Mm.
anything that we can improve on?
Heather, I think you give a lot of great information. I think for me, it's just being able to have the time to absorb it.
Yeah, yeah.
And just curious that after we're finished today, if we have any questions, can we email you?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I've given you access to the online course on my platform on Tech Host Academy. And inside of that platform, if you're in there, that's a great place to ask questions, because what that does is if you have questions, chances are other people may have the same question and we can all benefit from it. But you can also just drop me an email if something comes up. If this is something that's technology based, I do offer sandbox sessions for facilitators and tech hosts who just want to test things out, testing things like some of the delivery things that we're going to talk about today. So that's a possibility too. And I offer one-to-one sessions. So much like our office hours, each one of you, I think we only had one person in each one, which was great because you all got one-to-ones. If you had a one-to-one session, I also offer things like that too, if you needed that. So yeah,
So
good.
what is a sandbox session?
So
Or
a
what is that?
sandbox session is usually where I have anywhere from like 4 to 20 people just show up and they want to experiment on what the latest thing in Zoom is. Or someone might show up and say, I've never done a breakout room. There's enough people in this room. Let's try a breakout room. If you wanted to try annotation, but it's like having a study buddy, but having a group of people. So we're really, we have enough people to try lots of different things. Third-party collaboration tools. You literally bring anything that's tech-wise into the sandbox and we just play.
And you do that regularly, or
Yep, I
how
offer
do
it.
we know when it's happening? Or
I will let you know. And I will also, I don't have, so if you go, let me put this in the chat. If you go directly to, I have to type it, techhostacademy.com. I usually have a place on that homepage where you can scroll down and I have a video where I talk about it and you can say, sign up for the next sandboxing session here. Now they are $25, but it's something that people usually get their question answered, and then they learn a lot more from other people in the room. It lasts about an hour and a half.
What
so
days are
that's
they? What days are they usually?
They're on Thursdays at 10 o'clock, and they're different days of the month, or like different weeks of the month, but they're usually Thursdays at 10 o'clock, my time. So 10 o'clock Mountain Time, whatever time it is for you right now, that's when they're happening on Thursdays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Great questions.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Right.
I gotta save this.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I really resonate with what Susan said. Like I've been trying to sink in so many things that I haven't had time still to go through everything that this is opening for me. And I just realized I haven't been doing so much graphic facilitation. I've been doing a lot of graphic recording, but now like a world is opening up, and
Nice.
I'm more mindful of, what I've been doing really.
Yeah. Wonderful. And also know that I'm really grateful that we had this time together where we had a week apart so you could kind of play with this. Some of my future classes are like 4 days in a row, which
Whoa.
is, could you imagine getting all of that, right? Like you could get it all, but then when do you have time to absorb it? So I'm hoping that over these last couple of weeks, you've at least chosen something and you've kind of
Yeah.
picked it up and maybe it's influenced your work a little bit, but
I still
yeah.
have some home play keep for the following weeks.
Well,
I
that and
still really do.
also for me, this work never ends. I'm constantly improving how I teach this class. I'm constantly improving how I, as an AI facilitator and visual practitioner, are offering things. So just know that if you feel like it's just beyond your fingertips, it's because it's always going to feel that way if you're someone who is a lifelong learner, curious, and always wanting to improve. So I would say, I don't want to say don't, I will say be gentle on yourself. This is just part of that learning journey. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, I'm glad to hear that we're living into our destiny. That means that we designed this very well, right? So in that dream phase, we designed a space where we can do these things, and hopefully we've created a space for that to happen. Yeah, Marina, did you have something
And I was
else to
going to
add?
say, and be appreciative of what we know as we are here.
Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. You have gained so much knowledge and you brought so much knowledge with you already. Yeah.
And Heather, before we forget,
Yeah.
can we at the end ask people if they're open to sharing their emails?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
Or
can
if
do
we
that.
are, can we just type it in the chat?
Exactly. Type it in the chat. Yep.
Okay, great.
Great. That's super. Good. Well, another piece that goes along with this, and remember, anytime I put a little star in the lower right-hand corner, this is something that I'm going to give back to you, is this is a great piece to ask folks in the room. How might I nurture myself when I can't access my best self? So remember, when we're doing that work in resilience work, we're working for ourselves. The responsibility is on ourselves. And part of that is self-care. So I'd invite you to use your annotation tool. Remember, that's in your toolbar. If you don't see the annotate tool in your toolbar, it may be under more, or at the top of your screen, if it says you are viewing Heather's screen, view options, there should be a little annotate tool there. And there you can choose the text tool to type, how might you nurture yourself when you can't access your best self? So it's sort of like, okay, I'm not being my best, but what can I do in this moment to care for myself?
I still cannot find it.
Okay.
I used to have it at the top.
If it's not at the top, maybe under view options next to where you're seeing my screen, there are view options button. Does it say annotate? Let me double check.
Yeah, I'm
Hold on. It's
Okay.
because I restarted and I didn't enable. So this is good. Now you should be able to see it.
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay. So really important piece as you're facilitating, make sure that you enable it for others. Yep.
How might I nurture myself?
Hmm. So.
Nice. you both able to find that annotation tool? Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, being present with your discomfort is really tough, isn't it? And at the
It
same
is.
time, so important and such a great skill to have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To me, it's
good.
a
I'm
big
just gonna,
discovery.
it is. It is. And if it's something you can do, if you can be present with your discomfort, that's something that you can, it helps you on so many levels, right? It keeps you from making fear-based decisions. It keeps you from reacting to things. If you can really be present with your discomfort, you can make better decisions for yourself and for others. Doing more of the practices that allow me to get recentered to my calm and grounded place. That's right. We are learning these tools to take care of ourselves. This is when we need them the most, is when we can't be our best self. Ask for help. That's fantastic. Oh, I love this. Great. I'm going to take a quick picture of this for us because that is so good to know. And these are generally great things to be able to do, right? So I just took a picture. I'm clearing that. We can close out our annotation tool. So what's the purpose of this? So hopefully over this course, you've learned practical applications of integrating AI and visuals into meeting design. And today's session is the focus is to consider the different ways to deliver your visual templates as part of your facilitative process to ensure that actually our destiny or the client's destiny, their desired outcomes are being met. And so this is going to be, remember we talked about the balcony and the dance floor. We just did a dance floor exercise where you were annotating and you were being the participant. But I'm going to show you today some, no kidding, how to make those things happen in terms of digitally and analog, whether you're online or if you're in person. What are some of the tools that I use to be able to do that? And I'm going to put in the chat right now for you, and I'll also put this in a follow-up. This is a screenshot that I just took of a graphic that I was working on of what we just did and how to annotate and where to make those changes. So that will also
I
be in a
don't know if we can see it.
it
Ah,
should be in the
you
chat
should.
now. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it takes a moment, and I love it. You're just so keen. That's great. So today we had our welcome. We talked about how we might nurture ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about analog versus digital. Then what do we do to follow up with our client on the delivery and those next steps? We talked a little bit about living our destiny. We'll talk about that again. And then I want to wrap up with one of my favorite ways to wrap up a meeting, and that is the learn, do, thank. And so hopefully when you leave here, you are going to have plenty of options to deliver your visual templates. But before I go on, I want to just stop and check and see if you have any burning questions today before I go on with the rest of my presentation.
There's something that's kind of it's, well, let me just ask it. You talked about putting paper across the wall, where do you get that kind of paper?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great question. So let me ask others in the room. Marina, where do you get your paper?
It's funny to me, I work digitally quite a lot and I don't get paper very often, but we also have a Neuland provider here in Madrid that I can contact, and they have, when I use paper to, no sé, rotafolio, like the ones that you put up, and they're, but if I have to buy the big ones or panels, I have a shop, an old school paper that I call and they deliver wherever I need those. I haven't done that in a while.
Yes. So there's a couple of different places, and I'll show you this website so that you have it, Neuland.com, and some countries do have different distributors. I'm trying to look for their paper rolls. Here we go. This is their.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do they have proper paper for all this? Of course they do, no?
Yep. And you'll see that they have these little end caps here because a lot of time what they've created are these you can put the roll on the side of their portable walls and then pull them across if you don't have a wall to put it on. But I am going to put this in the chat along with
Heather, say that again. They have what?
So they have portable walls as well.
They have portable walls?
Yeah, because sometimes we go into meeting rooms and they don't have.
What is the portable wall?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's
That's
tons of
very
them.
interesting because sometimes it's challenging how to hold your work,
Yes.
how to hold it, where to place it. So
Yeah.
it's great. I didn't know that, Heather. That's great to know.
Okay. Let's see.
I
Let's
use
find.
sometimes, these hard papers that you can have like a foam, and then you use like the thing to hold the paintings, I
Now,
don't know.
this is really small, and I'm going to show you one because I have one here in my studio. But I want to show you this because it's the small one. This you can do in your studio and then show a video on, like you can show your camera on it, or you can do this in person. But notice how this has two rolls, and you can slide this paper across
Mhm.
and you can roll it so it's like constant. Well, they make these in really big ones too. Let me see if they, oops, the V4.
Wow. So
So
that you
check out this
use
wall.
online even, no? Maybe you're drawing and you're showing what you're drawing.
Yeah,
No?
yeah. For the Wally, yes. This is their largest wall.
It
It
gets a little
folds.
expensive, huh?
Well, this
It
one
is a
this
little.
is the most expensive. They're not all this expensive, but this one is your largest wall. Look, it has 5 panels. It can totally fold up. You can put it in the back of your car. And then it also has these rolly bar, like this is how it attaches, but then it also has, you can put those attachments on the side to put one great big piece of paper. This is great for rooms where the walls, most meeting rooms are not made for visual practitioners.
Yeah.
So we have to create our own walls. Let me type in wall again and you'll see
And
some of the
Heather,
smaller.
can you rent these? Because
In
I think
some,
if
yeah, in some
can you
countries you
rent?
can. In some
Mm.
countries you can. And if you don't want a great big wall like that, now this is a whiteboard and a pin board, but I use a pin board. It's fairly small. You'll see like these are the people standing around it. So bigger than a flip chart, but not as big and clunky as a wall. And I have one of these in my studio and I can break it down in 5 minutes, take it where I need to go and pop it back up.
How big is this?
Well, look at how big the people are here.
Yeah,
So
I
it's,
know, but I was looking.
so you can find, it says
Oh, I see.
50 by 76 inches. Yeah. And they make paper for all of this too. So this is where I would ask you to play around with this website, look around, ask me questions if you have them. I am an ambassador, so I'm going to give you a coupon code for 15% off your first order if you decide you want to order from them, but it's only for one order. So make it count. So buying a wall, 15% off would make a pretty big difference.
Now, what do they have on here? Pins or something?
So here they're probably using magnets. You can use pins, you can use magnets. They have special tape. Yep. This is gonna,
But with this wall, you'd tape the paper on it or something.
I put pins in the corners.
Oh, got it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And they have paper for this. Let me find one more wall for you before we go on, because there's actually, and it's funny that they're not showing their walls. I don't know what they call them, that they're called. Oh man. Because I've used, okay, here's one. This is called a graphic wall. Now this has 4 boards. You can break it down into 2 boards, 3 boards, whatever you want. But again, this is where people are using the really tall paper, either 1 meter or 4 feet tall by however long the wall is. And again, you could put rollers on them. So I was a part of a conference where my team, we were the keynote speakers, and we had a chart that was over 20 feet long. And so we rolled it as we presented. Yeah.
So did you have a wall?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I assumed all of you had bought this wall and you use it all the time or something.
Yeah. 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 We had a team that we each had a wall. Like each person on the team had a wall because we were constantly going out to different places.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So it's a business expense. It was a pretty big team. Yeah. But you don't have to do that. I mean, now I don't have a wall because I can't carry it anymore. I just don't have the physical strength to do that. So yeah, Marina's showing you can get easels, and you can put, sometimes I get foam core delivered from the local hardware store, and the client may have easels. Yeah. And you can rent easels too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did. Maybe Susan, if you don't do it so often, I think,
Yeah.
this can work. You can rent an easel. There's events, that here in Spain, the events agency, sometimes they even have them to rent. And then I buy foam paper that is, instead of just regular paper, it's like, it's a hard surface. So even though it's not so good for the environment, I think, because that paper, yeah.
No, I use Gator board. So there's a product called Gator board or Eagle
What is
board.
that?
How do you spell that?
Gator, Gator, or Eagle board.
Gator.
And they're both better for the environment.
Ah, really? And where did you get that? I don't know if
You'll
we
have
will
to
find
search
that
because it's
there.
constantly changing. Yeah, that's something you'll have
Gator
to search
board
for.
or Eagle
But it's
board?
similar.
And it's made of what?
It's made, I can't really tell you because I don't know exactly what it's made out of, but I just know it's better for the environment. It's made out of recycled materials and it can be recycled, whereas foam core can't be recycled.
And it's light.
Yeah, that's the
and
problem with
big
It's
or
very
something?
light. Yes.
Light and big or something.
But
Yep.
they need to send it there because that's another thing. It's hard to carry that around.
Yes. So that's the thing is I one time just went to my local art store, had a bunch of 1/2-inch foam core cut in a Z fold, which means it's just slightly cut on each side so that you can fold it together so that it's easy to ship. But after 3 gigs, I could have bought my own wall.
How did you do that? Like to fold it? What do you mean? How did you do
it's a
that?
1/2 inch thick and you score one side on the top side and you score the bottom side on the other side and it's in 3 different sections and it does a Z fold. So it folds like this and folds together.
Okay.
And the first time I ordered it and had it delivered and had to ship it back so that I could reuse it, I was like, okay, that was cheaper than a wall. But after doing that 3 times, I could have just bought a wall.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to also put in the chat to where to find the paper. So we went down a bit of a rabbit hole.
I mean, this is kind of important because how can I do a session?
Yeah. So the question is, this is what I ask my clients, send me a picture of the space.
Every time.
Every single time. And what you're looking for. And if they show a picture of like a screen that's covering a wall that's kind of hanging in front, say, what's behind that screen? Is there artwork behind that screen or is there nothing behind that screen? Because they want to show you that there's a screen. It's like, I don't care about the screen. Put the screen back up. Show me the walls. Show me the walls. In some cases, you can work on dividers that are in the middle of conference rooms, right? Sometimes you'll be working a lot of whiteboards that are in the room, which I have no idea why they do this. They put the whiteboard so high up that you can't reach the top half anyway. And you can't put your paper up because they've got that little board. They have that little tray for your markers that it's sort of like you got to stand on a ladder to get to the top of it. So you have to do some logistics. This is why when you hire a visual practitioner, you need to bring them in early on in the design phase, and they're going to ask you a lot of questions about the space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now that makes sense. But also you can also say, okay, we need a hotel room that has a long wall.
Yeah. So ask for a conference room that has a long wall, maybe even ask for one that has a divider. I know that I just did one with the one that I just came back from had a 24-foot wall and my charts were 20 feet long. And so one day I did it on that wall, then I rolled it up, stuck it on the wall with the cheesy whiteboard and all that stuff. I just taped over everything that was on that wall, over artwork and everything. And then I put up my chart again to work on that temporary, it's like a divider wall, you know, how they put those temporary walls up between.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That can
But
be
those
very
all
challenging.
Yeah, those are all things you have to be thinking about. Yeah. And also know that some whiteboards, they put cleaner on some of the whiteboards that end up being so slick that you cannot tape on them. So also those are all things that need to be tested. Yeah. These are the challenges, Susan, that us visual practitioners go through.
I got it.
Yeah. I also put in the chat a link to Grove Tools. They also carry paper. It's a little bit more expensive. You can also go find some on Amazon. What you're looking for is 24 pound at least, right? So if you just get a 20-pound bond, then sometimes it's really see-through and it will bleed through. So you're going to have to put up 2 pieces of paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Heather, can you say what's a good size? Like,
Does somebody else want to answer that? Because I have a preference, but my preference is not what most people do.
4
What do
by
you-
8 minimum.
4 by
What?
8 feet.
4
4
feet by 8 feet minimum, I would say. And then if you have more, then you don't have to like move paper around. If you can put a 12-foot roll of paper out, that's great.
And Marino, you said that you work mainly digitally.
Yeah, the truth is that I've been with the pandemic and everything, I am even a bit scared to go back into paper because I completely, yeah, I might be going to an event in not so long ago, and I'm feeling like, whoa, I need to, go back into all this stuff. And I feel even a bit lazy. Huh? It's so easy just to pop in with
You can make a choice.
tablet.
It's totally
Yeah.
up to you. I decided that I was not going
Yeah.
to do graphic recording anymore, and I got sucked into a job and I did it. But I'm trying to get out of graphic recording,
Wow.
period, because
Mhm.
I like teaching and I like facilitating and I'm better at that. And I'm not an illustrator. And when I first started in this work, there weren't any illustrators in the field. That didn't exist. There were like a couple of thousand of us,
Mm.
right? Now, so many illustrators have come into the field that don't understand process work, that don't understand the
Mhm.
facilitation, that when I graphic record, I can't hold a candle to them because I'm
Right.
not an illustrator. My work does not look like, it's not illustrative. And people are happy for the first 5 minutes. And then they're like, can you draw this? Can you draw this? Can you draw this? And it's like, I'm not an art monkey. Right. So I'm not interested in doing large scale graphic recording anymore. So to answer your question from my point of view, Susan, I like to work at the size that is right sized for the client's needs. So if that means I'm doing a 20-foot wall because it's a 2-day event, yes. But my personal preference is either to work in the studio, meaning I'm not live with the client, I'm creating charts for them or creating final pieces for them. And that can be any size. But honestly, physically, I can't go more than 4 by 6 feet because I have an astigmatism and I literally don't see 2 feet away from what my arms reach is. I'm
Mm.
not 6 foot tall, but 5'5".
5'6", you said?
I'm 5'5", but 6 feet wide is the largest that I will go wide. But my preference is pinboard. My preference is pinboard because for so many reasons, I can either make it vertical, so it's either tall, or I can make it wide because there's pinboards that can go both ways.
What is
I like the,
pinboard?
what's that?
What is pinboard?
I just showed you that pinboard where the people were standing next to each other.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. So I love pinboard because the paper they give us, I like working on brown because it's ethically forested. I know it's recycled and it's recyclable. I don't necessarily like working on white paper. I know that a lot of clients like that. But the brown paper, if you have it going vertically, has little lines on it, like watermark lines that the client can't see. So now you can make sure all your lettering is straight, which is really nice. So I have gotten it down to where this is what I like. When I'm working at home and they want me to go big and white, I use what's called a Wally. And I showed you that it has the little things on it. I'll show it to you in a minute. And I like working on flip charts. I like the smaller sizes because physically I can't do that big work anymore. I used to lug all that stuff all over New York City. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. I've made the choice. So I work smaller.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great because I do use flip charts and stuff, the Post-it notes, the big ones.
Mhm.
And I guess I could actually, you can line them up, right?
Right.
Totally.
Exactly. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can,
The only
if your process is going from one thing to another, you can have a bunch of flip charts already, like parts of them already
Right.
mocked up as templates. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, that's the size I like to work at.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Good.
Got it. Oh,
Yeah, flip
Newland,
charts are great.
does Newland have brown paper as well? Just
Uh-huh.
curious.
Yep. They have
they
brown
do?
paper.
Okay.
Yep. They have all of that. So again, play
Okay.
around on that website, see what you like.
Got it.
Ask me questions because the shipping to the United States is insane. So that's why that 15% is going to help you. It's going to help
you-
cover the shipping.
Where
Did
are
you
they
touch on Neuland paper already? I've never ordered paper from Neuland. How does that
Mhm.
compare to the Grove? Because it's in SF, it's 2 days away. It's pretty
Yeah.
easy
So
for
the
me.
Grove paper is really great quality, but it's also expensive. And the paper from Neuland that comes in the rolls is pretty much the same as Grove. I haven't literally sat them next to each other, but I
Mhm.
use them interchangeably and don't have any issues with the Grove paper. The
Mhm.
Grove does have some pinboard paper that's called economy paper. That's like a step above newsprint. So
Oh.
unless you're using that, and it's a kind of whitish, unless you're using that, all the other papers are really good.
Okay.
Yeah. And I love their flip chart paper. It's really quality paper. It's like 24 pound. It doesn't bleed. Yeah, it's good stuff.
And where's Neuland?
Neuland is in Germany. It's in
Oh,
Eichensell,
you're
Germany.
kidding. I'm
Nope.
ordering from Germany?
So in the United States, we do not have a reseller, but a lot of other countries around the world have resellers.
Is there a reason for that? I mean, I've always wondered why. I mean, it's great. I mean, I can get my stuff from Neuland in 3 days, and they're really fast and they're turnaround. But why haven't they done a US based
I
reseller?
can't really speak to that because I've been talking to them for years, either for myself and hooking them up with potential resellers, and I still cannot crack that nut. I mean, I've had this conversation with them for 6 years now.
Right.
And I've even said, I will move to a big city and buy a big warehouse and do this.
And I could do that, right? Just add another piece of the business, right?
It's like, yeah, it would I look at that and go, that is, do I want to do that? Probably not. But could anybody do that? Yeah. So why
Yeah.
haven't they? I have not been able to crack that nut. So sorry, I can't answer that question. I'm
Right.
only an ambassador. I only help them design products. And even though I've spent a considerable amount of time with Guido and Verena, and we've talked about this, it's still can't. I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't figured it out. They're just,
Well, I will tell you, I love those new pens. They are the best. The
you're
big.
talking
Which
about the
ones?
Neuland art
Yeah.
markers.
I ordered a
The-
whole ton of them. I use those are the best.
The
I don't have those.
largest art marker in the world that is a nylon nib. And I've been asking Guido to make this for me for 6 years. And his first response was, Heather, if I made a nib for every single person that came to me that wanted a nib, I would be out of business. And I said, this is the one that's going to change the game. And it did.
I could see like getting rid of all my other mark. I could work with those
Really,
all the
but it's
time.
very big, no?
because they can
So-
get small. You can write
Oh,
relatively
really?
small and fine with
Okay, I
them, or you
see.
can lean them on their side
Ah.
and get really big text.
What's the
Makeda,
name of
which-
that one? What's
Oh
the
yeah,
name of that one?
which one's on Neuland?
You know what you all remind me of? I'm sorry, you're like little baby birds.
Yes, we are.
Pen
It's like-
nerds. I'm a pen nerd.
Let me see if it's this one.
Okay,
I
hold on.
think,
Let me
Susan,
flip
maybe
this
you
around.
know what, these markers are so great because they are refillable. So
Yes.
and you can even
Oh.
change the nib, and I guess that's also why we are also
Okay,
like
so
loyal to them, because they are
can
amazing. And
can we have the exact website thing so I can?
Yeah. Yeah,
at
I'll
that.
give
send the
I'll
link.
give all of that to you. Okay. So this is called the art marker. Notice I'm holding it by the ergonomic grips. I'm pressing really hard. This
Yeah.
is probably about 2 inches high. If I flipped it over, because this side has developed what's called an underbelly. If I flip it over and I use the same pressure,
Mhm.
I can write smaller because it's going to give me a thinner line.
Right.
Right? If I wanted to go big and go
Ah.
double, this
Yeah.
is architect, but really big. So now we're getting into marker. This is 2 inches high. If you are someone who likes to draw your letters, I'm not. I'm a writer of letters. But if you want to draw your letters, you could make it as big as you wanted. So this art marker has the most versatility of any marker that's on the field. Now, Brandy Agerbeck and I are starting to have a really, we're talking about having a little side by side because she loves the big one wedge nib, which is the wedge nib version of this. And she and I are going to do a side by side video where we're going to have like a marker off. Yeah. So
That's like a fun thing to watch.
yeah.
So you're gonna
See, look at that. You can write super tiny. I am sold on those.
Yeah. And
Like-
this is an older
Wait,
nib.
and so they don't wear out, like if you're writing tiny, you know
Okay, that's amazing.
how markers after you use them for a while, then they
They
lose.
wear out. This is a
Yeah.
marker. It wears
You
out.
can change the nib and
you
you can
replace the
refill
nib.
it with ink.
Yep. So this
Oh.
never has to go in the garbage.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I got it. So you can change that little, what do you call them?
Nib.
Nib, NIB?
NIB.
Yeah.
You can change the nib. I'm just looking around. I don't have any nibs with me because everything's at my studio, but you change the nib, you fill the ink, the back of it, you can fill it with ink. And we have videos on how to do all of these things. There's a whole world, Susan. This
Oh,
is what I
yeah.
love about bringing this particular group together. So what,
So we need to get this one for sure.
Yeah, you can change the nib and you can like refill it with ink. There's
I
just
didn't try that. I've
a
been this
ton
summer.
of versatility. They're the best. I'm
I
so
need to get
Say.
that.
Oh, Makeda, we should show that again.
It's the little felt nibs that fit
What-
into the inside the pen. And
Oh,
so, you know, I'll just pull it out and stick a new one in there. Put a little bit of ink on the nib and then fill the pen, because there's the ink. You don't spill ink in changing them. They're the best markers. You don't throw them away. So
let me ask you something. Is there a wide variety? Do you get the pack that has blue, red, green, and
Hold on, let me answer that.
Okay, great.
Susan, there are about 19 colors. And there's probably about, and I don't know for sure, even though I'm an ambassador, I would say there's about 12 different types of markers. There's round, brush, wedge in several different sizes. So I'm telling you, this is a
Okay,
whole
so
thing.
just tell me which to get.
Yes,
Tell me
I
what
want
do.
to watch that
I-
video with yeah, the witch. I want to see that
Yeah.
video.
It really depends on your preference, because some people look at this brush nib that Makeda and I are going bonkers for, and they can't make it work because it takes finesse, because there are lettering styles that go with that. If you are like, look, I just need something that ink's going to come out the end, then you need to look at a round nib marker. But
Yeah,
if you're
you
like,
know what? I could do that with
if you're
I
used
could
to
do with
use,
a Sharpie or something.
we don't
Right.
use Sharpies because they smell, they'll give you
Right,
headaches, they're
got it.
toxic.
I got it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
also
yeah.
have, but what I'm saying is that what I liked about what you guys said, what is it called? A wedge marker?
A wedge nib marker. Yep.
It's-
So a
okay.
wedge nib marker has an angle to it. It's got several different sides to it, so you can do all kinds of tricks with it. So let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you access. I'm going to give you all access to a class that I call How to Write Like an Architect. And inside of that class, there is a bonus. There's several bonus videos, but one of them is how to write like a graphic novelist. And what it's doing is it's taking a round nib type of lettering style, turning it into a wedge nib, and then flipping it on its end to really stylize it. So architect is something that you can literally learn in about an hour. And then you can start practicing it with different types of nibs. And you can write this lettering style with any nib. It can scale all the way up to title size. It can go all the way down to little bitty print. And that lettering style can, if you never do anything else, Susan, but improve your lettering with that one lettering style, you can use any marker in the whole range and have hierarchy.
Mhm.
And that hierarchy is going to help you with your flip charts. It's going to help you with everything, your whole layout. You could just use that one. It's like having one font, having your font.
Okay, is this a class that's on video that we?
Yep.
Oh,
I'm
great.
going to grant it to you afterwards. Yep.
Oh, great.
Absolutely. Yay.
Thank you.
Everybody's happy. Check. Okay. So I want to show you something, because we're going to run out of time. You're all asking me such great questions. I love it. So I'm going to show you a couple of other analog tools that I like to use. It's upside down. That I like to use as a visual practitioner working analog. So this is not digital. This is analog. What you see here, and you see this little spine that goes down the middle.
Mhm.
This is a book. It's called the portfolio or the project book at Neuland. And do you see those little grommets that are at the top?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Those grommets they will fit onto a flip chart. So why is this important?
Mhm.
I can mock up all kinds of ideas in these pages in my project book, take it to a client who has a flip chart, hang it up, and facilitate from there. I can even put a piece of plastic over it and write on it as like a temporary thing to show them this is what I do. So when I was literally beating the streets with my work, I carried this portfolio with me everywhere.
Hmm.
Okay. It's just a great piece to have. And even if they don't have a flip chart, but if they have a big conference table, people gathering around looking at this, they're like, whoa, this is cool. You write big. It's just a
Yeah, right.
portfolio. Think like an artist, right? So that's one of my favorite things. And I
Oh,
mentioned
that's
before,
cool.
I
So
mentioned
it's
before the Wally, right? So the
okay.
Wally, this is the Wally that I showed you online where we have the, this thing can go back and forth. Let me get it better centered on my screen. If I take a little bit of time and really center this well, then I can be working live in front of the client quite large with white paper, and I can preset a whole bunch of things before I get in the room, or I can just have a white piece of paper ready to go where I'm working with them. Now, remember when we talked about the aesthetics, those
Okay.
sticky notes?
Right. Yeah.
They can move all over. That is stuck there without me having to peel it off. It doesn't leave any residue. It doesn't finally the adhesive wears off, and I can use it with any chart. So that's a really great tool too. These are the aesthetics. Again, another Neuland product.
Oh, wow. They have everything, don't they?
They have
Everything.
just about everything. Yeah. So this was a class that I taught a few weeks ago. I think, oops, starting
So
to.
what's the Wally again? Is that the board?
Yep, it's called the Graphic Wally. If you did a,
Graphic Wally.
yeah,
And that's at Neuland too, right?
yep. So, we didn't show you the really big marker, but this is
Is that a marker?
yep, it's a 30 millimeter marker.
Whoa.
Now, I did hack it, which means I put pencils on the side so that I can
Why?
draw even bigger letters, to draw these big letters. You can either have your marker do it for you, but a lot of people say, what if you want white letters with color around it? You use this marker, or this pin hack is what I call it, pencil hack.
Wait, so you just put that on?
What do you mean? I mean, I built it. Yeah.
Oh, you built it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you haven't given that to Neuland. And by the way, Heather, you should get a percentage of everything that
So
your students buy.
So I don't get that, unfortunately, but I do get to give you a discount, and they do sell my book and some of my courses. And so I do get kickbacks on that. And I did invent a couple of other products for them that I get.
What is your book?
Heather created the circles, which I use all the damn time.
Thank you.
Those things are the best.
Oh my God.
What
The perfectionist in me
circles are you
wants my
talking
circles to
about?
be nice
Okay,
and perfect.
I'm looking for.
What are you talking about, Makeda?
Do you have them, Makeda?
I do. I'll pull them out.
What's a circle? What do you guys?
It's called an
talking about?
orbit. I made 2 templates. These are drawing templates for people, because you know how hard it is to draw a circle, and especially in front of everybody and really fast.
Yeah.
Plus, have you ever
I
tried
don't
to
mean
draw
that.
A round circle. You mean a round circle?
a round circle? And can you draw a round circle so that it's a perfect Venn diagram?
Perfect circular. So these things, you have like your small circle, inside and outside, the next size up, and of course you can see they fit inside each other.
Yeah.
So you have all these circles, and the possibilities are like endless. There's actually quite a bit of information scribed on the sides here that helps you to lay them out to get, like perfect Venn diagrams. But these are really, really useful when I'm.
Thank you, Makeda. I didn't have to sell them.
I know. I love these. These are great.
What are they called?
They're called orbits.
Orbits. Yeah.
Orbits.
Orbits. And
yes.
Neuland, right?
Yes. And I designed them for myself because I couldn't draw a perfect round circle. And then I created what's called the hexit. And that does a hexagon, because I couldn't draw a perfect hexagon. So I just went to my local maker space and cut them out I laser cut them into plexiglass. And then I showed them to Guido, and he laughed at me. He was just like, whatever. And I went, okay. 3 years later went by. I'm doing my first European lettering tour. So I'm traveling all over Europe, teaching all these lettering classes. And I made a stop my last stop was in Germany. And before I got there, I contracted someone in the UK to make 100 circles and 50 hexits for me. And
Mhm.
I sold every single one of them before I got to Germany. And when I
Wow.
got to Germany, I showed it to Guido, and I said, Guido, you laughed at me 3 years ago, but I just sold 100 of these.
Mhm.
And he goes, let me see that. So I showed it to him. And the next day he came back to me with an identical replica. He had replicated my design. And he goes, did I do it right? And I was like, I could have just sent you the digital file. And he's like, well, send me the digital file. I was like, here it is. So he did it. The next day he came back and he replicated it again. And he showed me what he did. I was like, that's great. And he goes, can we sell these? I was like, yes. And then we negotiated a price. I get because they're very expensive to make. And so it's a very,
Really?
very small margin. And so, yeah, so I get a very little small cut, but every year I get a nice little credit and I get to buy more markers.
Yeah,
Or
I think you need, I think you need a business manager who can negotiate for you. I'm serious.
No, I love to
Heather's
negotiate. You
clearly
don't
running
understand.
things. This is
You don't
good.
understand. I love to negotiate. I'm a good business person. I can handle it. But
Okay.
there's not a lot of markup for these things that I design because they're so bizarre and whatever. This does not have to be a Neuland product. This is 2 pencils, a fat one, a piece of tape, and a rubber band. Literally, that's all it is. And in my book, which is called Lettering Journey, I'm looking around trying to find one. I have a class that goes along with it, and I have a video that shows you how to make the hack. So my book, Lettering Journey, has 7 different lettering styles in it. Architect is one of them. And you learn how to make these really, really big letters. These are all made for visual practitioners. So this book is for visual practitioners, and I want to show you the page where I show you literally how to make the hack. It's right there.
I forgot about that hack.
Ah,
That's a cool one.
All right. I asked if you had any burning questions. You did great. What other burning questions do we have before we take a break and talk about anything else?
no, I'm just
Let's talk about digital for a moment.
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah.
So
Can't speak about
everyone
digital.
does something a little differently. I will tell you that my go-to is an iPad, the largest one I could find, which at the
Yeah.
time was the 12.9. I think it's called a 13-inch. I'm looking around because I can't. Oh, here it is. I highly recommend, if you can, get some kind of a cover that has a keyboard on it, because otherwise it's just a drawing tool, which is fine. Get a matte cover, something. So one of the things that's really hard for visual practitioners are whiteboards and iPad services, because it's like glass. There's no resistance whatsoever. So to create some of that resistance, if you notice the reflection right now, it's sort of matte looking. There's a product called Paper-like. I've never used it. I always just buy a cheap matte cover on Amazon because they're like a quarter of the price. And this one is my second one, and it's lasted me 3 years. So even though people swear by Paper-like, I think it's great that company exists, but I just get the cheap matte cover. Also, when you have your the tip of your iPad, or your pencil, which I don't, for some reason I don't have it here right now, they
have
make
it
this
here.
product that's called a pen tip. Do you have a pen tip on there? No, is it on there?
No,
No,
because
no,
I have
not
the cover. I have just a regular tip. I have a cover on my the screen, the matte one.
Yeah.
and, it's enough.
If you want this double friction, then you can get what's called a pen tip, and it's a silicone nib that goes right on top. And they just came out with a new one that screws into the iPencil. So it screws right in, so you can
Pen
replace it
tip.
completely. Pin
I
tip.
never
Yep.
heard about that.
I'll
PIN.
see. PEN. And yep, if you go to pin.tips, I'll put it in the.
Okay, I see this.
Yep.
Hmm.
So I use that at the very beginning just to get me started, and then I end up pulling it off.
Yeah.
Okay. I
I'm good
like it.
now.
Yep. And so you also want to put some type of a grip on if you're using an Apple Pencil, a grip, because that is the slickest surface. Yep. So she's got one there. And does it have magnets on it?
It does. It's quite destroyed at the moment, but yeah, it does. Yeah, it's like you can, because I have the old the iPad still
Mhm.
working. I bought it secondhand, and I think that was the best thing I bought ever in my life.
Yeah. I started doing digital scribing the same time I started with paper. So I was doing them at the exact same time, which was great. Some people had to make that shift, which is a bit of a shift, right? But I will say that I went a while without an iPad because I was just working manual. And when I came back to buy a new iPad, I made sure that I had a job and I paid for it the first try. I mean, it will make its money back. So don't be afraid of buying technology because it will
And
make its money back.
would you say, Heather, the new iPads are any better or it's just the same?
I don't know. I've had the same iPad for 6 years
Yeah,
and I'm
because
still
I
going
have an
strong with
older
it.
one and the older pencil and all that, and I'm always curious. Might it be better in some
Maybe.
way?
I don't know. Makeda, how new is yours?
Mine's pretty new. I'm maybe 3 years old. But
Mm.
I've got everything you're talking about except for the pen tips and the grip. So I'm checking that right now.
I
Can you get
think
the
the new
grip for
pen,
pen tips?
maybe it's a bit better, no? The grip
The
and
the
stuff.
new pen is
old
a
one.
step up for sure.
Yeah,
In
I
terms
think
of
maybe.
battery life and connectivity. When I bought this, it was like the transition between what you have and this new pen, and everything I read was in favor of the newer pen. But
Yeah.
if it's not broken, if it works for you.
Well, still going well. We're good friends.
So Heather, is this so that you guys can draw on this?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
And what types of drawing apps are you both using?
I'm on Procreate.
I
I'm
use-
still, yeah, go ahead.
No, please go.
I mean, you mentioned that the one that you use allows for vector and allows you to scale. And I've never so far I haven't run into an issue where I need to scale things up so big and need to have that, I've never had to have that issue.
Mhm.
So but I guess the question I had for you was, is the program that you're using, is it, if I was going to go from Procreate to, what's it called?
It's called Fresco, Adobe
Fresco.
Mhm.
Is it comparable in terms of like function? So would I have to
It
go
can-
through another steep learning curve to like
Yeah,
learn
so
Fresco?
it does the same thing. It literally does the same thing as Procreate, except it also has that vector feature, but all the tools are different. So yeah, it's gonna mess you up a little bit.
Different. Okay.
Yeah, I know Procreate and Fresco. I don't know Procreate as well because I've always gone back to the vector world. And
Mhm.
I do that because I started out as a graphic designer using, some of you might remember,
Illustrator, yeah.
Aldus Freehand before Illustrator and
Right.
then Illustrator. So I'm an Illustrator girl. So I have a whole workflow that I'm like so fast at it that that's my tool of choice. But a lot of people like Fresco or like Procreate because that's what professional illustrators use. And it's a beautiful tool.
Mhm.
And remember when I was showing my screen, when we were doing the what was it, the appreciative inquiry resilience chart, you were seeing the whole thing. I was zooming in and out and you weren't seeing any of that. So it still has that same presentation feature that Procreate has. Yeah,
Mhm.
Adobe Fresco. Absolutely right.
Mhm.
I use Procreate, but I use Procreate for doing graphic recording and all that. But when I do visual thinking videos, I use one tool called Concepts that is also, and it's harder for me to do. So I don't use it for doing a fast graphic facilitation, but I think for the quality of videos, it really makes sense to use it. And it takes some time to get used to. Yeah.
Yeah. I did a series, this would have been back in 2000 or in 2020. I hosted a series for the International Forum of Visual Practitioners. And you can find, I'm going to put the link here, and this will give you all of those recordings that I did. Verity Harrison covered concepts. She's an illustrator. Malgosia Kosteka, she talked about 5 different apps, why she uses each one of them. Muddy talked about how do you make all of these connections. Christina Merkley and Lisa Moore, they actually use, and I forget it now, Sketchbook Pro, and they're
Mhm.
using it on Wacom tablets. So that's a very different way of working. Rachel Ben-Mergi, she was using Fresco. She was a beta tester for Fresco at the time. And Amy Sparks talks about Procreate, and she does some more advanced tips on how to use the touch features, the haptics, to bring up tools really quickly so that you can work quickly. Now, some of this information is a little outdated because it was 2020, but you should all be able to access that. If you're having any issues accessing it, let me know.
So
And we'll
what's the
see.
easiest to learn for those of us that are
This
not?
goes back to size of paper.
Mm.
What
Oh,
do you,
really?
Yeah.
yeah, this goes back to what do you plan to do with it, right?
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
Adobe Draw before Fresco was so easy. I always used it and I went, this is so easy. This is literally like using a stick in dirt. It's like there's only one thing you can do. It's great. But I
Mhm.
don't know, what do others feel in terms of ease?
I'm figuring Fresco looks like it doesn't look like vector. It's pretty amazing, huh? The tool. I don't know. I'm curious.
It does vector and raster. It does both.
Ah, it does both.
And that's the
And-
only app that does both. Yeah.
And
Now
I
you-
think
Yeah. I don't use
Procreate
both.
is-
I pretty much just use the vector, but I can use the
Okay.
raster if I want. Yeah.
that's cool. And I think Procreate is pretty intuitive. I think Procreate is a tool that is not so difficult to learn, I think. But
If
I don't
you're
know.
already
If you
technically keen.
if you understand layers, you
Yeah,
know,
of course.
so
I
there's a
know
component
Photoshop
of
and all that stuff. So that's at the base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right. If you've used Photoshop or Illustrator and you just understand how to like layer when
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
drawing
Oh,
is the factor. I
Yeah.
think.
What I would say, Susan, is if you aren't interested in drawing and you just want to have a white area for people to do things on, you might look at using the integrated whiteboard that's in Zoom or look into Jamboard, because Jamboard is something, it's rudimentary in terms of drawing, but you can get people drawing together and then you don't have to do the drawing.
Okay, so a whiteboard is the one that you showed me before where I go, I mean, it's not on Zoom, right? It's in.
Yeah, there's two different kinds of whiteboard in Zoom.
Whiteboard, right,
If you go to share screen, just click the button just for a moment, that
Right.
green button. There, right next to your desktop, there's a whiteboard feature.
whiteboard.
That's very rudimentary. There is, if at the bottom of your screen, if you go to whiteboards, you can create whiteboards that you can work on asynchronously and share it with other people. And it's got a few more tools to it. That would be a really easy way to get people working asynchronously and through Zoom. And they even have some templates in there too. They've been expanding this for several months. Yeah.
Okay,
And they've got most of the bugs worked out. The advantage of using whiteboard in Zoom is that you can do that asynchronous work. If you want to get a little bit more complex, I would look at Miro or Mural, and I'm going to put those two in the chat. Oops, I spelled Mural wrong. These
that's
are
wrong.
third-party collaboration tools where you can do all kinds of wonderful things with. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
What was Jamboard?
Jamboard is it a Google product? I think it's a Google
Yeah.
product. And it's just similar to whiteboard, only you can have several slides and you can draw and do fun stuff with it.
Yeah, put post-its. We use that one a lot because I think sometimes people are not so good at tech, and it's a very simple tool to use. It's not very fancy. Sometimes you cannot make great formats, but it's basic and useful when people don't need to have a high level of mural and all that. I'm learning now. Because of this course, I'm realizing how many things I could be doing. So I'm actually right now learning how to do that more.
Mhm.
And,
Now, for
yeah.
you more advanced visual practitioners, do you have a tool yet that allows you to co-draw, meaning you are working collaboratively, you're in tandem online at the same time?
Drawing.
Please expand.
Are you ready?
So I could be working with somebody else that's drawing in another space and we're collaboratively creating.
In the space. Now you could do it on PowerPoint. You could both just be in a shared PowerPoint and you're drawing in there, but we know that that's like drawing with sticks and rocks, right?
Right.
Magma, if you go to magma.com, I just stuck it in the chat. This is something that literally came up this week, and now there are dozens of visual practitioners getting together in groups and doing this and jamming out together.
Oh, wow.
It
When
looks
are we
it
trying
looks a
this?
lot like Procreate, and people are adopting it very quickly. Like it's just came out this week. I was so excited to share it with those of you.
Just came out. My
Well,
goodness.
no, it's been around, but it just came to our field. Like it just got
Mhm.
introduced, and now there's a bunch of visual practitioners that are using it. I'm a part of
Can we
a
test it somehow for free or no? Is
probably.
that
I'm
only-
not gonna dive into it now, but yeah, if you wanted if we want to get together at some point and do it, I'd be happy to do that at another time.
Is it like a networking group where everybody starts to draw?
It can. Yep.
Yeah,
And
they have a
again, you can
free
do that on Jamboard,
version.
but that's like drawing in the sand. Magma is like drawing like Procreate. It's absolutely gorgeous. And so what it could possibly do is it's going to change the way we as visual practitioners, but specifically illustrators who happen to come into that are graphic recorders, are now going to create live work in front of the client in virtual settings. And that's something that we have not been able to do successfully. And we've been behind. And that's why so many graphic recorders have stopped being graphic recorders. They've moved on into other fields because
Mhm.
they couldn't do this in big spaces with other visual practitioners. You know, I don't know if either of you have done this, but I used to go to do graphic recording jobs where there were anywhere from 5 to 12 of us at a time doing big events. And so
Mm.
this allows us to be able to do that online, and we didn't have this capability before.
Very cool.
Okay, any other questions about
Whew.
delivery specific digital or analog?
Okay, yes.
I
I'm
have a
just,
question.
and
We may
maybe
not
this
take
is
a break
something,
today, so if you
this
all
is
need to take a
something we
break.
might need to jump into like in office hours, but for me, it's the post. If I'm working analog and I'm taking photos and the cleanup I use Photoshop to clean up my charts, right? Crop them down, get them nice and white. But I'm also often losing, color. Like if the pen's not super dark and solid, then it starts to change. And so I find that now, which is a nice backup, is like I'll photograph a chart and do my very, very best to get all the light I can, to the point where sometimes I'll take the whole board outside
Yep.
in the sun to get a full light on it. And then I'll bring it into Photoshop and lighten it up, crop it down, and then bring it. And then when I lighten it up, sometimes I'll lose my drop shadows, I'll
Yep.
lose, all kinds of different things. And then I'll bring it into Procreate and basically kind of redraw the whole, so many of the elements that disappeared.
Wow, I don't do that
had
much
to do
work.
that.
I'll tell you that right now. I do not go to that level because my clients are not looking at it that clearly. If it's going to be reproduced, like blown up and reproduced, or it's going to be put on a tote bag, maybe. But I'd
Mhm.
never do that as a general deliverable. Just me
Mhm.
personally.
I just like them to look as
I
good as
know.
possibly
That's
can get
good.
them. So
That's
I
good.
do spend a good amount of time in post.
So do
So
you
what's
have a
your
question
method?
there? Okay.
What's your method for
Yeah.
post?
So first of all, I never use 101 gray. Take that out of my palette completely.
I love that pen.
Okay.
It's my favorite.
So
Okay.
What
so
did
I
you say?
hear
look-
that.
Gray. You don't use gray.
no,
You
I
said-
do use gray. I don't use 101. I use 106, 107. I do
Mhm.
not use 108.
the
108 and
thickness?
102, which I love, but 106,
no,
107.
I'm sorry. 101 is fine. 102 not. That's the one you
102.
love. Yeah.
I love 102.
You're losing
yeah.
it. You're losing
Yeah,
it. Use
it is great.
107, or you're just gonna have to go a little bit darker.
I'm gonna save
108
my markers. I
or
don't remember.
107.
You are talking about the
Okay.
colors, no?
Yeah. Yeah. So go ahead and do a test and go
Mhm.
ahead and do a test and put it on your wall and photograph it and use your own workflow and see what's popping up. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, 102 and 108 are going to disappear. 107 is borderline.
Okay.
106 is my happy place. When I teach
106.
lettering, I order all the 106 art markers and I teach everybody in that marker to
What
be able
color
to
is
see.
it?
It's gray. 106.
106 and
That's my
107.
favorite. 106 and 107. Test those along with your other grays. Yeah.
Okay.
And do that and look at 303.
Mhm.
Do the same with 303. That light blue, you lose that. If you're using
Yeah,
that
that one
really light
disappeared.
violet, so
Yeah.
do a
Mhm.
test. Take all those lighter colors and you're either going to decide to pitch them Like those are going to be the ones you donate to somebody else to play with, or
Mhm.
because you don't make it a part of your palette anymore, or you're going to have to adjust your workflow to bring those in.
Yeah.
Now, one way to adjust for that, and you might have to ask the people, if you send your work off to be scanned, high res scanners will usually pick those up.
I've
If
never
you-
done that.
Okay.
Scanning a 4x8 chart. Like some
So
people,
Brian Tarallo took my 4x20 charts and scanned them, and it took him 5 minutes.
wow. But
Yeah.
he bought that big ass
He
scanner.
bought the $30,000 scanner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Wow.
that's what he does. And if you want to send your charts to him, he'll scan them for you. He has a whole checklist of this is what you've got to do, can't do. And I can also, I'm just going to put in the chat Brian's checklist, and then I will later on make sure that you all have it. If you want to send your work to someone, these are the kind of things you have to keep in mind that makes their job easier, you know, to make it so that your chart will turn out successful. When I was working in person, I was doing like you were doing. I was shooting my
Mhm.
charts. Now my husband's a photographer, so he would bring all the photo lights in, and I
Mhm.
was using flash photography and making sure that it was all even and shooting that. A couple of things about doing flash photography is you can't use the labels that are security labels, you know, the ones that have that like metal backing on it,
Yeah.
because it will reflect back to you and it'll turn out black. So you cannot see what you
Oh.
wrote on. So
Uh-huh.
I always use the regular label. It's funny because Brian tells me use the security labels, and I'm like, I don't use those because if I'm photographing, I can't. So it's like it depends
Okay.
on what you're doing. If you're scanning, you can use them. If you're photographing with a flash, you can't. If you're doing it with regular light, maybe it'll work. It's all about how it reflects back into the camera. So
Right.
keep in mind that. Um,
Phew. Okay.
but yeah, those are my
That's good to
main
know.
things. Yeah, those
So
are my
actually, I don't take my lights often to the spot. I mean, I have 2 ring lights and I can put them
Yeah.
on stands, but I find that if I don't get the right light, I spend so much time in the post.
so
But
here's
it's
the
my favorite pen, darker drop shadows, make sure I got good ink, and then use flash. I don't usually use a flash. I find that my best photos come from my iPad,
okay.
and bring the light
That's
up in it
that's
and shoot with
impressive.
that.
Yeah, that's impressive that you can do that. And that's probably because, okay, I won't say why it is because technology keeps changing, but I was a photographer for many years. And so I was always using 35mm to shoot my work. And then finally now I'm like, I shoot it with my phone. A
Yeah.
lot of visual practitioners will use like some kind of a scanning software that's on their phone, but
Mhm.
you're going to lose all those highlights, and it
Right.
just really makes it super contrasty. But they like it because it makes it contrasty and super saturated and pops. But if you
Mhm.
know how to do all that in Photoshop, you're fine.
Yeah. That's right.
As far as direct lighting, even if you have great light outside, I would still put it in the shade in bright light, meaning there's no, you know, there's not like if I put it in bright light, like it's like direct sunlight, I could get a shadow from me or a tree or something. But if
Right.
I put it in the shade and it's brighter, not the brightest, then I just have to account for that being a cooler color. So I'm going to warm up the color a little bit in Photoshop, but it's usually always much more even. I'm not going to get a hot spot.
Okay.
So that might help too. If you've got like paper on a board and you take that
Mhm.
board outside,
Right.
I stick it somewhere where it's shaded but still brightish light because I'm
Mhm.
looking for even color.
Consistency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
consistency in your
Every
light.
room's got like, the down lights that are creating these big bright spots on it.
Exactly.
So hard.
Exactly. Those are
Okay.
impossible. Yeah. Good
Thank you.
questions. These are all good. Yeah. All right. What
Mm.
else?
Marina, the benefits of working digitally. You don't have to worry about the
Yeah, I
photograph.
feel I'm like I feel so lazy to go back into it because I it stressed me out quite a lot.
You're not
All this
lazy.
carrying things around, and then yeah, like I find that oof, it's hard. So, but to me, you don't often find places with very good big screens. So I might need to go back into that, but I confess, it's to me, it feels stressful sometimes, just all
Yeah.
this. And then I also, I think it will be good to digitalize after. What I've been doing quite a lot as well is instead of doing big panels, I do like live illustrations. So I take all the insights in single visuals, and then we use the visuals for reports. And I know I lose a lot of information because I lose the whole picture. But I also have the theory that many times people don't read the stuff. They don't really look at it. They don't really take the time. And yeah,
I
and
think it
I
depends on how you design it to live afterwards. So
yeah, exactly.
this gets into delivery and beyond, right?
Yeah.
So after I'm finished with a client, this is what I used to do, and it all depends on how the design is. But I had one client that was, I want you to do all the paper stuff. I want pictures of everything. I want a narrative. And so what I would do for them
Mhm.
is I would create a PowerPoint that had an image on each page. The narrative would be in the notes. And then I would also make a PDF that had the narrative so that they could read it, right? So this is a file that can live on its own, that they can pass it out if they want to, they can print it out if they want to. But that PowerPoint became very important to them because they wanted to report out to the organization
Yeah.
what they did in that important meeting. They wanted to report up so that they could get support, budget,
Yeah.
things like that. That's where we can show our value as visual
Yeah.
practitioners. If that piece that we created can be used, if it's specific for, we just want it for marketing, great. Do we want it for internal branding? This is important.
Yeah.
Do we want it to show this is the execution that we're going to need, the support we're going to need from above, the support we're going to need from the rest of the organization, and we're going to use it to report down to the people that report to
Yeah.
us to say, here's the strategic plan, right? It all
Yeah.
depends on what that desired outcome is. That
Yeah.
delivery needs to be able to match that. So if you're starting to get a sense of, I don't really feel like my work is being looked at, then
Mm.
I would really look at where are you in the design phase of this, like where do you get hired and do you get to be a part of the design, and start asking them, how would you like to use these visuals afterwards?
Yeah.
Is this a change management tool? Is this going to go in a tote bag? All those things need to be considered before you even step into the room. Yeah. What was your
Yeah, I
question,
just
Marina?
wanted to share about that because I think that's, to me, that's the most important part of everything. Like, what do you want to do with this? What is this for? And in my experience, I think what I did the craziest was to do like a live magazine in an event. So we did a visual magazine, but we actually designed the whole magazine. And at the end of the event, everything that happened that was actually all harvest was in display. And another one was, I'm super proud, I think I show you, Heather, but we did this card. So I do graphic harvesting of what comes up in a training, and then we did some card games with it. So I am more open also to all these possibilities, no, to open up and then to do reports that people really want to read. Because yeah, here we work with people in the European Commission, and they say all the documents that they have for doing policy making, they don't open again the documents. They only
Right.
open 20% of them than one time.
Right.
And that is very, very
I
scary.
tend to, yeah, and I tend to be a little bit of a generalist. So if they need a PowerPoint, I'll create a PowerPoint. If they need a PDF, I'll create a PDF. If they need a final piece that's going to go and reproduced, I'll do it. However, I have friends. I'll give you two examples. I have one friend that is an incredible visual practitioner, incredible facilitator, but all she wants to do now is make preparatory flip charts and charts and then have the facilitator do everything. She doesn't even want to be in the room. She's like, we're going to build this so that you can have your own scribe. Right. So she's literally, that's all she does. And the clients that she takes in, she's already created a portfolio. This is what I provide for you. And they're like, this is great. She'll make a couple of maybe videos or a couple of handouts that explain how to do something. And then she ships it off to them. She makes a couple of grand, just a couple of grand being in her studio. I have another friend, another visual practitioner in our field that will teach, facilitate, graphic record, but whatever she does at the very end, they get an actual physical book of what they've done that shows that what they're doing. Everybody in the room gets an actual physical book, and she insists on it because she knows that that book is her portfolio, and they're going to keep that book because they're not going to toss it. right? Even if it goes on a shelf, they're going to pull it down someday. Her contact information is on there. She's getting residual work that way. And she makes sure that everybody gets a book, because then that book goes on the CEO's desk, or that book goes to whoever is making proposals the next time. Hey,
Right.
we need to bring this lady into the room. So you can be a generalist like me and just do, go to that desired state and make sure that your design fits it, or you can say, this is my niche, this is the way I work.
Right.
So when I hear you say, Marina, I don't know if I want to do in person again, you don't have
Don't
to.
have to.
You can create your own niche. Just don't niche out so small that you keep yourself from getting business. But you can, every once in a while, if you want to do it, that's fine. But you can say, hey, here's what I'm excellent at, and you can focus in on just that one thing if you want.
And then
I am
Marina,
curious about something that you said, Heather, because you are opening up for me this curiosity about really graphic facilitator and really understanding of what it means that, no? And I'm curious to know because, well, I definitely resonate with what you say, and I really believe that panels can be useful, but the more long-lasting life of things, the better. And so we need to keep that in mind. But I'm very curious, and I'm struggling with what I've been doing with this client, how to design, like as a graphic facilitator, it's very hard to design the whole process because things go on a different way, and sometimes you go in a different path. So if I want to say, okay, these are the templates we're going to use for this process to get where you want to go, but as your friend is doing, but I would love to do that, but there's a point sometimes things don't work, or they
Okay.
turn to a new.
Hold on
and
a
what
second.
do you do there?
When it turns, and I think Susan might have an answer to this, but I'm going to give my answer too. When something turns, whether it's a one-to-one long series, or if it's like either a long day or several days, there's always going to come a point. Always. This is when we talk about Sam Kainer's work, diverge and converge. The groan zone happens, and the participant wants to change the process. When we have a really good plan as facilitators, or a really good set of charts like Christina Merkley's Shift It, or the Grove's career compass or personal compass, you're going to find those groan zones. But because that work is so good and it's so well planned, people can veer off and still come back to it and end up in the place they need to be. So if you're allowing your client to change the process, you are not facilitating anymore. You've lost control. But when you allow them to move and dance around the process and bring them back into the place where and they know, they said from the beginning, this is where we want to be. I'm not saying you lead them there, but you facilitate a process, and those visuals help support that process. It won't veer off. I mean, it will veer off a little bit, but they'll still come back to center. It may be that this is your first time doing this, like give yourself a break, right? But there are systems out there, or facilitated ways to getting people there. They can still go and dance around that. But Susan, I want to hear if you have anything to add, because I know you're a seasoned facilitator.
yeah, so Marina, so maybe I can explain to you how I work one-on-one executive coaching, because I think it might help you in this process, because you're doing one-on-one with her, right? So the thing about it is that in the first month of when I meet with a client, I really find out who they are, their gifts, their blind spots, their strengths, their weakness, their genius, their patterns, good and bad. Based on that, I come up with a purpose, and the purpose is the direction that we're going to head. And it's behavioral in nature, by the way. And then the outcomes are how we're going to get there. And they're like maybe 5 of them. Okay. Now it's just a one sheet, and they agree. Yes, this is. So we kind of know the direction we're headed. Then based on that, I create a 5-stage process based on who they are, which is a framework of how to get there. It is a framework, but the framework allows them to start to fill things in as we go along. So this framework I create, along the way, besides when I create the framework, I'm asking them, are they going to be open to doing this practice, that practice, and if they're not, I change things. But they get this program that's been designed for them. It has photos, it has quotes, it has everything. so they kind of know, they know the direction. But as I start to coach them one-on-one, we have breakthroughs and breakdowns. And based on that, I start to change the direction. I start to change the direction because I said, you know what? Based on this, the practice that I have in stage 5, I'm going to now bring it forward because you're already there. So that framework is more for me than it is for them. It guides me, but that purpose, we're still going towards that purpose. We may go south and we'll come back. We may go here and come back, but that purpose, so that the end of 6 months, when I read the purpose, they go, oh my God, I have changed. This is amazing. So the framework and all that stuff is just like the structure, the framework of a house, where I fill in it with different furniture, with different interior design based on how they show up, based on breakthroughs and breakdowns. So I don't know if that'll help you.
So the map is not the territory.
There we go. That's Christina Merkley's.
Mhm.
That's what she
Okay,
says. And I
that's
just
good to
stuck
know
that.
where that came from.
Yeah. I just
Yeah.
stuck that in the chat. Yeah. The map is
I
not the
actually
territory.
got one of the cards is about that. That's interesting. So it's interesting what you say, that the map is for you. Here we go. I have a
Yeah.
card that is the map is not the territory. Yeah.
Helps to guide you, to keep you going. Oh, wait, okay, so I have to take her off track, but I have to go back to this. How do we go off track because of what they're giving me? And then, you know, now I'm taking a different route. I'm not going on Highway 61. Now I'm going on Highway 204, but we're still headed to Palm Springs or whatever.
But it's funny that I'm doing my own process with the team we work with, and sometimes that brings a lot of frustration when we are not taking the road, you know, and we go straight there, and then you land there and everything is perfect and you're on time. No, that's not the real road. And I think depends on the energy. Sometimes it's really hard. It
Well, you
just
know,
feels that.
Yeah, I always, when I do a group coaching thing, I always let them know that I want them to be comfortable with uncertainty, and I want them to be open. And so, you know, visually, this is how I start my Salbona Leadership Forum. I literally got a video of someone kayaking down a river. And I literally have everybody in different parts of the world. They make their own paddle by taking a broom and putting 2 things on it. And literally I have them shut the lights off in their room. I put on this video, and it's almost like, you know, they're going down. And I said, this is what you are in for as a leader. You have to be willing, because in this day and age with uncertainty, when things come up, you have to diverge. Yes, we have a general direction we're going, but you have to be willing to go with the flow and be able to, at a moment's notice, change directions. So I keep planting that seed in them. So when they get uncomfortable, I said, yes, change is uncomfortable. And if you're not uncomfortable, you're not changing. So they keep getting that message reiterated in their brain, and they go, oh yeah, that's right. Okay. I guess this is good because I'm uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. And they need to hear that, because if you bend in their level of uncomfortableness, you've stopped facilitating. You know, you're letting them be in control, and then you've lost it. It's gone. You can't chase them. You have to, and I don't want to say steward, because you're not guiding them, but you're there for them. Yeah, Marina.
And I'm then realizing, like, we don't know how long each of these stages is gonna take, like how long discovery can take, how long delivery can take, how long
You can choose that. You can choose how long that takes. That takes practice and time. I mean, maybe it does diverge a bit, and you have to take a little bit more time than what it takes, but you don't have, it's about knowing how to get them to that point so they can go to the next point and the next point. So in the discovery meeting, and let me just go back over through this part.
Heather, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Marina, I think what Heather said is really important. The more and more you do the work, and take them through any kind of framework, I know ahead of time, when my clients have a breakthrough or breakdown, I know them so well that I kind of know where it's going to go before they even get there. And I've had the most, I tend to, people send me the most difficult CEOs and execs of international organizations. I mean, because they know that I can handle them. And they have no idea. They may take me like way out there, but after 6 months, as long as they step into the journey, they always get there. And they're so shocked. I'm shocked sometimes too, but it's, I trust my instincts enough to know when, they have the breakdown. I can almost say to them something, I know, but I let them discover it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So a lot of it just takes practice too,
Well, this is
Yeah.
experience too, right? And being and
Well, yes.
having good trainings
Absolutely.
and being around really good other facilitators and being around facilitators that aren't good and you know it. You're going to learn from them as well. So this for me has only been because I've done it a lot and not as much as Susan. And I've been with a lot of really bad facilitators that I had to step up and try things and then realize, ooh, that didn't work. Ooh, that did work. Okay. So, and I think one of the key pieces that Susan really talked about when she talked about her process, she literally followed the framework for appreciative inquiry. And let me get my
Mhm.
thing here. Right. She followed all of that. She talked about understanding them, getting to know them, right? So she's discovering who they are. She's gathering the information for this process. She's figuring out what it is their needs are. We talked about that what do they need to see, hear, feel, understand in order to take that action? I'm going to do a quick review on the design phase. We talk about logistics. Is this in person or is it online? And then what are all the pieces that go with that? Who's bringing lunch? How long of a time do we have with people? What are the group sizes? We know that human behavior is different in pairs than it is in large groups. So we have to design for those. We've got energy. I will say that you all took me off my course today, but I'm hopefully giving you what you want and what you need so that you can be able to deliver this. And then that gets into those as visual practitioners, are we creating the visual templates to support the process? So the reason why I'm teaching this class together is because I never wanted it to be this is what visual practitioners do if I taught it to facilitators. And I didn't want to teach visual practitioners facilitation. I wanted us to come into the room so that people like Susan can see us geek out on all these things and understand there's so much more than the product that we're going to give her. There's so much craft and technical pieces behind that. And we as visual practitioners, most people come to this work and they have no idea what the facilitated process is. And it's a whole art form in and of itself. I wish that both of you, Marina and Makeda, and anybody else could have been a fly on the wall in the last office hours with Susan, because she explained her process in such a beautiful way that I was like, I want to be a fly on the wall when Susan's facilitating, right? This is a gifted person, and we don't get to see that in a classroom like this. And then when we get to that deliver phase, we've been talking, I mean, we started out asking, are we living into our destiny? But for the last hour, we've been talking about delivery formats. What are we doing in person and what are we doing digitally? And I've given you lots of resources, but you can always come back to me if you have those. But if you have questions, but one of the key things is let's get back to AI and ask ourselves, are we following the appreciative inquiry principles in our design, in the way that we are capturing this and the way that we're delivering? Because if we can follow these principles, we are living into that destiny. Okay. So I've given you some handouts, and hopefully you've had a chance. This define and discover was at the very beginning. That was just getting to know yourself and knowing how you can differentiate and bring things to your client, getting to know your client, and then what you envision for them. That's this is just the very beginning of setting out that pathway, that framework. Then figuring out that purpose statement. This takes time to refine. And I think I remembered some of you, you nailed it or you already had it, and some of you were still drafting it. And this can take several iterations. You're thinking about a lot of things here, including the whole process. You're holding that whole framework for the client. And then I gave you a checklist. One of the things that you all pulled out, I just threw out the words see, hear, feel, understand, and take action. And I think someone said, wait, what was that? And I went, oh my gosh, that's important. Maybe we should write it down. So I am going to add that to the checklist for design. But there's also another piece that I thought about after that session, and that is how to take action doesn't just depend on the people in the room. Do they have the tools in order to take action? Are their bosses giving them the opportunity to take that action? And are they empowering them and giving them the support? Are they in a system where they can? Because this can dive down deeper where everybody says, yay, we went to this meeting and we all feel great and we're all going to do it. But wait, are we in a system that's going to allow us to do that? Us in the room want to do this, but are there like a level or 2 levels above us that are going to prevent us from doing this? What do we need to know in order to make that happen? This is a great time when things start to get, when people start to experience resistance or they're starting to push on the process. This is a great time to pull out of your own toolbox, whether you're a facilitator or a visual practitioner, what might be a good thing to do in this moment. And immediately when I heard myself saying that, I thought, we need a RACI chart. A RACI chart is when you determine who is responsible, accountable, needs to be consulted, or needs to be informed. And when you say, okay, we can take action and it's a clear path ahead, that's great. But if you're like, hold on a second, I think we can't take action yet. Well, what do we need to know? Who do we need to ask? Who do we need to get permission from? Who are the other people that are not in the room that are going to help us get there? So I'm going to add this to the checklist for design. And if you think of anything else that belongs in these checklists, please feel free to let me know. Notice I've also put like some blanks here so that you can add your own, because this is not definitive. It's not the only, and it's not all encompassing. And the same with delivery, right? Are you beginning your session with an appreciative tone? We're not going to start out talking about the problems. We're going to start out with those celebrations. We're going to talk about what we've accomplished. Are we considering as ourselves as facilitators? Are we in the right mindset? Do I understand the desired outcomes, the group needs, the client expectations, and am I providing a space so everyone has an opportunity to collaborate? So these are all very important pieces, and to use these visuals to help clarify those abstract ideas. You know, I said, you may have heard me say this before, that we as visual practitioners, when we come in the room, a facilitator, a gifted facilitator can help a group have really deep and meaningful breakthrough conversations. But visual practitioners capture those words for them so that they don't fall to the floor and the janitor comes and sweeps them up at the end of the day, right? So the follow-up, this is where we talked about make sure that we're creating pieces that have legs, right? They go out and they help communicate what happened in the room and appropriately. So if they're saying, you know, we don't want there to be any attribution, we don't want people to get credit for their great ideas, or we don't want people to talk about something that happened in the meeting that's going to hurt someone. Of course not. You're not going to write those kinds of things down, but you might be thinking about how these visuals can be created to help spread those words. And then, of course, always, if you can, have some kind of a survey. I like to say what worked. That's positive. What did you enjoy most? What do you want more of? What would have made this session better? That's a nice way of saying, what didn't you like? What would have made it better? You're flipping that in, reframing that into the positive. And was the purpose of the meeting met? Now, if they come back and they say, no, we should have gotten this far, go back and look at the purpose of your meeting. And if you're like, yeah, that's the next step. You know, we couldn't get there in an hour. We couldn't get there in 2 hours. There's going to be people that are already thinking days, months, years ahead. Get them in on your core team to help figure out what the purpose is and help them help others bring them along. Yeah. And then ask them, what's the next best step we can take? Maybe even say together, because you want to, if you want to keep that client ongoing, and then offer up your availability. But what are some other ways we can ensure that we have delivered to our clients' desired outcomes? Can you think of anything that needs to be added here, or anything you would add, something you do in your practice?
Well, Heather, I know for me, I always, and because I've done this for so long, if I do anything group coaching, we always have a point where we start to create a project to take the organization forward. So we're already starting to use what we have to create this project. So they have something that they leave with, and they have timelines and everything. They go, and then we talk about, and I used to do this, but I don't do it anymore. When I come into a company, I'm very upfront with the people at top that if you have to be open to what it is that they come up with, or I coach you so you understand how the holistic way I work, and based on your change, then we'll use the other people. Because I've been in too many organizations where they'll say, the CEO needs this, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I create the project within the time period we have, small or big, even if it's an opening. So that opening starts to happen, and we talk about the politicking. We talk about who do we have to politic to make sure this happens, and everyone is assigned different people. So it all happens in the context of the group. So it's not just the design and everything. It's the design keeping in mind the people that we have to deliver to.
That's right. That goes back into how can these people take action, right? No one wants to go to a meeting, spend days or hours, and then find out that their ideas weren't heard, that they couldn't do the thing that they wanted to do. And it's so expensive to get people all in one space, even physically or even on Zoom. It's expensive to take hours out of productive days and put people together. So I like to say, look, this is a big investment that your organization is making. Let's make sure that this design follows what it is you want, and that when this gets done and we make a no-kidding next action steps or a who, what, when chart, that they have the resources and the permission, they have what they need in order to pull this off. And you were absolutely right, Susan. Either the people in the room need to be empowered, or the CEO or the leaders, they need to be coached, because they need to be able to receive what these people are willing to do. Yeah, that's excellent. That's delivery. And if we can help that process along, then we aren't the facilitators that get pointed at for it going wrong. A lot of times,
I also make an agreement with whoever is above that out of this thing, they are going to create a presentation to present to you on this date.
Exactly.
So they already know that when they come in here, they're going to have to create this presentation for the CEO or whoever, and this is the deadline. So they're more engaged and they're more focused, because they're going, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah. That's where visuals can be really, really helpful in communicating what happened in the room. That's why when I shared that big, that 20, it was 20 feet long. It was 2 of these. I don't know if I shared it with all of you, but why I shared that story, when they said that the CEO and the C-suite team were going to come in, how are we going to present this to them? I said, we're going to give a gallery walk. And I just saw on Instagram yesterday that my client's client, they quoted them and put it on Instagram. This was the best meeting we ever had. And I was like, I'd like to take a little bit of credit for that. Just a little bit, maybe not all of it, but just a little bit. That's great news, right? So that to me is delivery. Are we also delivering on that promise? So I want to go back for a few minutes and talk about the appreciative agreements that we came and created at the very beginning. And I want to ask, are we living into this thing that we agreed to do? Did we do these things? Do we have a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a maybe sometimes? Yeah. Did we do it? All right. Okay. We got thumbs up. Great.
Let me acknowledge that we are very open to, the other one was open to what might unfold at the bottom. I really appreciate that.
That's where the magic happens, right?
Taking you off your agenda. I know what that means. And thanks for being so responsive.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you had questions. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, let's get to it. Let's get to it. But you also ask questions, great questions all along the way. So I'm so glad you all unmuted, asked questions, rose your hand. Hopefully we got to all of them. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I had to because it's when something unfolds like that, this is where we don't want to be the guide or the steward. We want to see what people need to talk about. We want to hear that. I'm trying to create a structure. Could this be a semester long class? Sure, but nobody would sign up for it, right? So if we can hit the high pieces here and you want to come to sandbox sessions or come to something else I'm offering, great. But hopefully you've gotten some of these things that we were hoping for. And that takes us to our high bar, low bar. Remember, we did these in the first day, and I love asking this of my client. Sometimes we come back to them, sometimes we don't, but I like to use this as a way to, did we meet the needs of the group? Connect with other professions with different views. I feel like we kind of did that. Some of us also have a lot of things that we have in common. Inspiration to learn, apply new tools and frameworks. Sorry, I missed the understanding of a range of. So if you wrote that, maybe you can tell me what that might have said. Someone wrote, able to apply this learning to my meeting next week. Did that happen? Or did you learn something else instead?
Heather, you know what? Before we leave today, I'd like to hear from Makeda on how it went for him in the presentation. And also, Makeda, I'd like you to put in your, if you're open to it, your email in the chat so that Marina and I put ours so that if we ever need to get in contact with each other, we can.
Yeah, and if you can repost that with him, I'm not gonna. I don't know if if he'll be able to see that, even if he saved it. So if you can all put that in the chat, that'd be great if you agree. But I do want to know: was someone able to apply something that they learned into a recent meeting? All right,
Ah,
good.
I did. Definitely.
right.
Yeah.
All right, so something that I'm seeing in here is feeling confident using AI and visuals. Maybe you don't feel as confident as you want to, but do you feel a little bit further along, maybe? I'm hoping.
Yeah, I
Good.
figure it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot to take in at the same time.
Yeah.
So for example, I am in the low bar with the visuals and I decided to put more of my energy in the process. And then possibly if I go a next row, I can, but if it's a lot. And I remember Makeda has this great idea of this breath rhythm and and I did a drawing for myself, but I couldn't handle the whole thing, how to really put all together. That was like a masterpiece for me right now. And I thought, okay, no, I'll trust the process. I'll try to apply this process for the first time. And then I will step on the visuals. Maybe, I'm experimenting, but I think it's a lot. This is really like an opening up for my brain.
Oh, well,
to a
good.
lot of-
And it was for me too. You each brought something that helped me refine me, hopefully as a better presenter, help me see AI and visuals on a deeper level. We all know that when we teach something, we learn it at a better level. But for me, I've been teaching AI plus visuals for a couple of years now, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning what people need and trying to gauge the people in the room and their level. I had one session where they were all facilitators, and at the very end, they still said, I still can't draw. And it's like, hold on a second, but are you thinking visually? If you're thinking visually and know what tools you can pull in, you still don't have to draw. The thing is what we see in our mind's eye and our own expectations are always going to be greater than what we can pull off in a second. And no one knows what that is until we put it on the piece of paper. No one in the room knows what we're thinking or doing until we write it down. And so I say that because we can put really high expectations on ourselves and never have enough time or resources to actually do it. And that's okay. Just be gentle on yourself because nobody else knows unless you tell them. So I'd love to take a moment because I do want to give some time to Makeda if he has some time at the very end to talk to us how his session went. I absolutely love this exercise. This is more for you, and I'll put this in the follow-up email. It's really more for you to be able to reflect on, but you can also use it in a meeting and I suggest doing it so that you tell people, choose one thing, take them through the process, give them a few minutes, and then choose one thing to share. Otherwise, you'll be there for 3 more hours. But the idea is let's look at learn. Reflecting on what you learned today or through this course, what are your key takeaways? And what is one thing that you learned that you're going to use right away? And I'll put this in the chat so you can see it a little bit bigger. So take a moment to reflect on what you learned and your key takeaways. You might want to write them down, or if you want to put them in a chat, that would be great.
Okay.
What I love about do is it's not what are you going to do? We've already talked about next steps and action steps in a meeting probably, but what are you going to do differently as a result of what you learned? Do you have a new way of thinking you didn't have before? Or is there something that you relearned or had to unlearn, had to change the way you thought about something? In terms of your doing, what will you do differently based on something that you learned?
So Heather, you want us to type this in the chat or what?
If you have something to share, yeah, I'd love to see it. And this is also a great journal exercise. And it's not for me, it's for you. Because when we reflect back on what we've learned and how we might do things differently, and then finally, what are we grateful for? What did you gain from this experience? We're putting a bow on top of that. We're saying, I'm going to take this and integrate it because I believe it has value. And if you're anything like me in my early ages, in my early stages of learning, you know, and when we're in school, in elementary school or primary school, everything we learn, we put to action right away. But when we become adults, college age and beyond, we learn things because we're curious about them, and then we don't always put them into action. And then if you get old enough to realize, oh, I need to learn how to reparent myself, or I need to learn how to improve myself in some way, we end up going from self-help book or classes or things, but we're not really integrating. So I love this exercise because it helps us integrate just a little bit more by reflecting on what we learn, what we might do differently, and what we're grateful for. Yeah, excellent. For me, so much of this process is always about the visual presentation, the design that goes behind it, and the value that it brings. That recently, because I had the opportunity to tech host for the Center for Appreciative Inquiry, I sat in on the class that I took years ago that got me certified as an appreciative inquiry facilitator. And what I realized is when I was teaching this class, I was teaching all the tools and the things and the visuals, but I wasn't teaching the AI part. And that AI part is such an important piece that brings depth to all of this work. Good. Great. So happy to see what you're bringing to the table. So I'd love to stay in touch. If you want to take a screenshot here, I'll also put this in a follow-up email, but I'd love to connect with you on social media. Feel free to ask questions, especially if you see a post that I've put up and that triggers you to want to ask me a question. Do it on social media. I'd love to have and continue those conversations there. I think that's really key. And then I have some upcoming offerings. So I will grant you access. In fact, I'm going to put it in the chat because those are going to be my notes for the follow-up. So I will grant you access to the architect class, how to write like an architect. But if there are other lettering classes, if you want to use AI visuals, you'll get 15% off at letslettertogether.com. And if you're interested in tech hosting, so that's something that I do for different organizations to help make their meetings more efficient, engaging, and equitable. I have a course there that is just called Tech Host Academy. You can add that to your skill set. So any other questions before we wrap up this time together? If you're muted, come off mute. Yeah.
What do you love about what you do, Heather?
Oh my God, it feels so good. It
Yeah.
feels so good. And the reason why I love AI is because this is just a bit of probably a personal backstory, but I have rheumatoid arthritis.
Mhm.
Anything that kicks me, knocks me off my balance, diet, exercise, stress, anything like that, which all gets affected by doing graphic facilitation full time in person, carrying all that paper around. Anything that throws me off makes me sick. But
Mhm.
I have found that when I do appreciative inquiry, my mindset changes. The level at which I operate, I do it at a way that I care for myself. I've built up appreciative resilience. This work just makes me feel great. And when I first saw the first two people that I met that were appreciative inquiry facilitators, and I took like these mini courses from them, I looked at them and it was like, it didn't matter what they were telling me. I was like, I want to feel like that,
Mhm.
whatever it is they're doing. And I asked them, I was like, how are you so awesome? They're like, I'm just doing appreciative inquiry.
That's actually the question that I was just about to ask you. Is like, how are you so awesome? But I shifted
It's
it.
appreciative inquiry. I used to be a real shit. No, it's true. And my husband will even tell me that I'm ornery. He's like, you're so ornery. He goes, I can't believe I can sit there all day and listen to you teach classes and do appreciative inquiry. And you get off the phone and you're ornery. Now, his level of ornery is that I go over and I pinch him on the butt, right? Well, okay. Is it that bad? You know, that kind of thing. But
Right.
yeah,
Love
it's
it.
because I love this work. I love this. And what did you ask me? What do I love? Or what did you?
I said, what do you love about your work? And I hear
It
it's the
makes me feel good. It
feel.
just
Yeah.
feels good. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
you love it. That's what's made this so enjoyable. One of
Yeah.
the made this so enjoyable. So thank
I
you.
love to watch people pop like popcorn. People are like popcorn. I've seen each one of you go, whoa, at some point in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks, right? At some point, I've watched you do that. And I love that because I know that I just told you something that now you're going to go do and you're going to make somebody else's life better. And that makes me happy. Yeah. By doing the great work that you do. So I'm excited to see what you do next. So I hope I see it on social media. I hope you'll share it with us. Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Any other last questions?
Mm.
Because we have a burning question from
to me.
Makeda. Yeah, go ahead.
Susan.
I'm just curious also, like I'm planning, like I'm willing to train more. Huh? And I don't know if it's the moment, but I will ask you about it. Like there's so many different paths we can take from this course, you know, to dive in. Because I work with groups, I work with companies, you know, so many different things. So I'm curious where to keep
When
on
you
training
see that huge
myself.
ocean, yeah, don't try to boil it all. What do you need right now and what's speaking to you? And don't let the mind decide because the mind will say, you need to get your PhD.
Oh yeah.
Wait a minute, you could take a 4-week class and that could shift the way you do things.
Totally.
Hmm.
It could be that simple. So see what you need. What does your heart need? What types of look at those ideal clients. What kind of ideal clients do you want? Not just who you're serving now. I'm not saying that they're not ideal, but they might not be. Think about your
Yeah.
ideal client and what they need and how you can bring that special thing. That's what these handouts are for in terms of figuring out, you know, what are you good at? And then what do you want who's your ideal client and what do you want for them? That's your decision piece right there to
Mhm.
help you decide. What's your dream?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But yes, you can reach out anytime. And I put a bunch of resources in the Padlet and I'll share that. What do you have, Susan?
Yeah. So, Marina, what I was going to say to you, I was thinking about this. You know, the client that you're working with right now is very much reflective of where you just said you are in your life. So I always learn from my clients. And funny enough, there's a lot of things that they're searching for that I am coaching them on that I learn from and go, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need too. So in the context of you working with her, just be open to discovering how that might open you up to what it is that you know draws you in. What is it that makes you passionate? And also to try to notice the signs of what it is that we need are all around us. If we are present enough to notice them and to see the clues, they're right there. So that's what I'll say to you, because that's happened to me so many times.
Yes,
Mhm.
Susan.
That's excellent.
That's beautiful.
Excellent. So Makeda, we all want to find out. I'll go ahead and pause the recording. Thank you everyone for being